got one of my favorite co-hosts by my side again, Mr. Danny Hardman.
Hey, I like that. And I like the fireballs too. That's
I
awesome.
it's super representative of both of our marketplaces right now. It's a super hot housing market and it is just as hot of a rental market, isn't it?
Wow, that perfect segue. I mean,
Thank you.
you're a pro. That's why you host the show, right?
I try my best.
Yeah.
So let me do a couple of teasers real quick because you are one of the brilliant minds in the state of Texas with leasing and property management. We've gone over some awesome topics, but today specifically, how are we going to navigate this super, super hot single family leasing market? So that was the first thing that you really felt like, let's bring the elephant out in the room and kind of talk about it. But there's a couple other things that I love that you brought into the fold. So, we're also going to talk about the pros and cons of transitioning your owner occupied property. That happens all the time where people buy their first home and decide to move up, but they want to keep it as a rental property, which is super smart. But there's a lot of caveats that go with that. So, but wait, we still have more, folks.
There's
Okay?
more.
There is more. We're also going to cover the facts and myths with leasing, property management, and investment properties during the age of COVID-19. So, there's a lot of different layers going on right now. And I'm just so happy that you were able to join us this week and give our realtor public and maybe even the consumer, some tips and tricks going through this. So I'm going to head off to you as far as let's kick it off with what the heck are we doing in this leasing market?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to come on. I think the time of year is great to talk about this as well. And it plays really nicely off the last real talk, talking about the crazy, red hot, on fire sales market. We're
Perfect.
seeing all the same things on the leasing side as well. So I wanted to just start first of all by saying, thanks for having me back, Ashley. I mean, my gosh, I'm super excited. We had a great show back in November, and I was like, wait a minute, that's 5 months ago. It's like you put me on the sideline for 5 months. What did I do
I
wrong?
will never put Bates
So,
in the corner again. So we will make sure that this is consistent. And you know what? Honestly, we've had a lot going on, and there's been some interesting things obviously going on in the leasing world with the eviction moratoriums and
oh
everything
yeah,
else. But like we talked about, feel like we at least have ways to kind of navigate some of those landmines that we didn't back in the fall and the winter. And so,
yeah.
but I know you're going to wow us with a couple of charts just to show us how on fire the leasing market is, and I wanted to start off with, it seems like the houses are going on the market and 6 hours later they're already pending as far as leases go. I mean, is it really happening that fast?
It is. So, what I want to say right off the top for all of our sales agents out there that are rolling their eyes, going, "Oh, I'm not going to get anything out of this tonight. This is all leasing." There's going to be a lot of stuff and a lot of information we're sharing tonight that is going to be very relevant for sales agents that are approached with clients that may want to lease. So, don't just zone out on us just because you're a sales agent and it's, oh, Dan's going to talk about leasing again. So, yeah, there is some data I want to show you guys right off the top. I'm not a fan of PowerPoints. I hate PowerPoints and all that. So I promise you, this is the only time you're not going to see our lovely faces. But I
Sure.
wanted to give you guys a really good visual of where the market is right now. I think you're going to find this data shocking. Well, not shocking. It's probably not surprising, but you probably have never seen it look like this before. So what I was looking at doing yesterday was I wanted to get a good feel for, we always talk about on the sales side as well, how many months of inventory are out there, right? And that kind of gives you a feel for, where the market is. And then I wanted to couple that with, what is the median days on market? So what I did here for you guys is I went back and pulled data from MLS over the past 5 years of single family homes in the Dallas, Denton, Collin, and Tarrant counties. Sorry, I didn't do the other outliers, but this is going to give you a good feel for the market. So look at what you're seeing here, okay? So this is really interesting. So on your left, you've got months of inventory. And as you see, it's very cyclical, right? It kind of goes up in inventory and back down, up and down. Now, look what happened last year during the pandemic. You notice the rise up only went half as high as it has in normal years. So that means there was not that much inventory on this in the single family home realm for lease. And then look right now where we are, how it's just fallen off a cliff. So much so that we're at our lowest inventory state that we've been in the last 5 years. Now, as you can probably guess, take a look at the right now. And what this is just your median days on market for those same listings. Well, almost all the same listings. I don't know how it trimmed down to 134, but you get the drift here. But look at where we are right now.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the days on market. This is lease days on market. This pretty much mirrors what you guys are seeing on the sales side, right, Ashley?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing those. I really want to see your handsome face now again. So there we go. Perfect.
Awesome.
But, you know, I mean, both of those were just super shocking. And, you know, we're used to seeing those peaks and valleys, you know, on the sales side, but to see it on the leasing side is just representative of what I've been dealing with. I've got a lot of clients that invest in the single family market. So helping them on that side, some that like to self-manage, even though I always tell them not to do that and call my friend Danny. There are some people that, so helping facilitate that side, or having clients that just say, you know what, we want to rent for a year, or have that flexibility to find that right home in this very aggressive buyer's market. So we're going to give ourselves some bandwidth. So we're going to go rent a property. And so I think you've got a lot more people entering that space from a sales agent's perspective in my sphere of clientele than normally does. And so like you were saying, sales agents don't turn it off. I've got, I mean, just on my board over here where I have all my clients, I have a slew of ones that are rentals right now, just to try to help them facilitate that transition. And so I think those are things just to really keep in mind. So going into that is what I want to know on this first part. How do we best represent first the property owner in this super hot market? What can we do?
Yeah, so let's do that first. And so what we're going to do over the next, few minutes here is we're going to go over some bullet points on how to best represent a property owner. One more thing I wanted to add to what you just said, Ashley, is we're going to talk a little bit more about transitioning a home from an owner occupied to a tenant occupied, but I'm also considering that potentially transitioning a potential sales listing into a lease listing, right? Because everything you just said is valid, but there's also people out there that are sitting on real estate that are like, you know what, I could sell this right now and I'm going to make a killing, but it's an appreciating asset in a great part of town. Well, maybe I don't want to do that, right? But they don't know the first thing about being a landlord. So this is going to help you learn the right things to share with your clients to make sure they're making the best decision. It's going to make you, even as a sales agent, look like a rock star even more than you are. So one of the things that we wanted to start with was Ashley tasked me with coming up with some bullet points to help you navigate this from the perspective of representing a property owner and representing a tenant. So let's go over the first section. How do you represent a property owner? What are some of the things you need to do? What are some of the questions you need to ask? Right off the top, when is this property available for move-in, right? I mean, that's really, really important. It's going to kind of guide you through the process, of how you're going to proceed from there, because they may be looking 6-9 months out, or they may be saying, I need to be out tomorrow, right? So that's going to be in fact, that's the first question I usually ask is, what's our timeline here? Obviously, you want to know, is it currently occupied? Get a good feel for the condition of the property. And then try to ask some open-ended questions like, what type of improvements are you going to make before a tenant moves in? That'll give you a feel for, where they are in the thought process. Oh, no, I'm just going to lease it just like it is. And you asked me this before we went on the air, right?
I did. Yeah, I want to stop you there because that's what I'm seeing is, one, I think we've got, just like on the sales side, I can just stick a sign in my yard right now and I can get a buyer. Sure. But is it the right buyer? Are you getting supreme leverage? Could you have gotten more money? So, I think the same goes on the landlord side. I can stick a sign in the yard and it's not a problem because there's 4 rental properties within a 10-mile radius. Well, that's great. Are you going to get a long-term tenant? Are you going to get a quality tenant? Those are things that still financially benefit because that's what again, representing, I do a lot with investment clients. And that's what I always tell them. I get it. You don't want to replace the floors. Let's try to get another year out of the carpet. But you're telling me you want a longer term tenant. Well, I need you to rip out that nasty carpet and let's put some LVP in there, because you're going to thank me when the tenant stays maybe 3 years instead of 1 to move on up or buy a house. And when your make ready costs are decreased considerably. And so, but the flip of that is, like I said, from a sales agent perspective, I've got people that are entering the marketplace that have a higher threshold of condition that they want to see. And when I'm showing these rental properties, I got to tell you, and by the way, I've not shown one of yours. I've showed Amy Carnes and hers were great, but I haven't shown one of yours yet. I am drastically disappointed in the overall condition of a lot of these, properties that are on the market. And so, so obviously that was my little going off on the rails on the side, but how do you handle that with your owners when they don't want to do anything?
So that's a great question. And what we typically tell owners, and I'm going to take the show from PG to PG-13 for just a second. So basically, here is my cuss word for the day. Crappy properties attract crappy tenants.
Yeah.
Right. Dirty properties attract less than ideal tenants. I'm not going to say dirty tenants, but you get where I'm going with that, right? Uh-oh. Check your bingo card off. My dog barked. Zoom barking dog. Check it off your card, guys. So that threw me off. Nothing throws me off, Ashley. But that is exactly right. And that's why you need to ask open-ended questions. Sure. If you're are you truly wanting to represent this landlord in a lease transaction if they're not going to take any action to make the property in the shape it should be? And you need to define what are your parameters on that, right? Because if you're going to be listing it for them, it's your brand, right? It's and people are going to judge you by that, right? And you may have other potential clients that judge you by that too. So just think the ramifications of that too. If you're going to take on a lousy property, that may hurt you from getting good business and good clients in the future as well.
Well, and I got to tell you, from, again, showing rental properties all over DFW, when I go into properties in areas that should look a lot nicer than they do, I question how responsive the owner or the landlord is going to be. And because that's a problem for me. And sometimes it's very simplistic things, cleaning up the property a little bit, getting the nails and the studs out of the walls or something else like that. Just make sure that it doesn't smell like dog. Sometimes it's just give us a clean, neutral product, not necessarily fully updated. So I'm glad you're saying that. And I think it just goes to the same thing, whether you're a sales agent or a property manager that's putting a house for lease. I think we all need to raise our standard and not negate that, whether we're in a hot market or a cold market. But I do want to kind of go into, a little bit of the tenant side, because I think that's what you guys are dealing with right now as property managers is, what can I do if I'm trying to help a tenant? Maybe they're a first-time renter, whatever else. They haven't gone through this process. What can I do to tee them up for success? So when you're reviewing their application, you go, all right, this is something that we want to pursue.
So Ashley, I know you're an eager beaver, but there's like 2 or 3 things that I think are really important that we tell our audience about from the landlord side, because I have 2 or 3 things that I really think we need to cover. So
I'll let it happen.
Oh, thank you, Your Highness.
You're welcome.
I agree. There's a lot on the tenant side I'm ready to cover as well. But on the landlord side, there's just a couple more things you really need to think about too. First of all, one thing I want, our listeners and our viewers to think about is, if you're going to be the agent representing this landlord in a lease listing, you need to be very careful that you're not inadvertently being the property manager, right? You have to have that line in the sand. You're not in charge of the make ready, right? You could be held liable for that, right? So you need to go over that. Who's going to handle make ready? Who's going to handle cleaning? Who is going to approve the tenant? How is the application going to be processed? Who's running the background check? So these are things that we need to think about, right? As somebody wants to do a lease listing without a property manager. Is there an HOA? Will that HOA actually let you lease that house? That's very important. People see a lease listing in MLS right down the street. Oh, that means I can lease. That's not true, especially in Collin County. There's a lot of HOAs that put a cap on the number of houses that can be rented. That is very, very important. So don't just think if you see a lease listing right down the street that you can lease that house. Double check with the HOA. Find out what their restrictions are. We're finding a lot of cities now that have rental registration programs.
Yep.
Many people aren't aware of those. You need to make sure that you understand what your city requires. Does the city require an inspection before they move in? These are things that you need to be asking on the front end. You know, make sure that your clients are aware of that. And if you are going to take the listing, pricing is almost irrelevant nowadays, right? I mean, there's a bidding war for everything, but is the price realistic that they're looking for, right? That is one of the things I find most important. I had a call yesterday with a client looking for like $300 more a month in rent than what the market can bear. Now that's being greedy and that's ridiculous. We're not going to take a client like that because it looks poorly on us because it's not going to lease for that. You got to know the lock and smoke alarm requirements. You got to have a tenant selection criteria. These are a lot of things people don't think about and traditional sales agents don't think about.
Well, the tenant, I want to stop 1 second on the tenant selection criteria. That's one thing that, and I know I've taken some of your classes and stuff before, heard you talk about this and stuff, but that's, I mean, especially when it's a sales agent that's helping out a previous client or somebody else that does that, I never see the tenant selection criteria in supplements or anywhere where they're advertising the property. I mean, can you just go over what that is and why it needs to be there?
So what a tenant selection criteria is, if you are just, let's just say you're the agent, and let's just say you're the homeowner. So if we just have homeowners on here, you're treated no differently than I am as a professional property manager under the Texas Property Code, which is the rules of the game, right? Tenant landlord law. So what the tenant selection criteria is, it's your written criteria of what it's going to take to get you approved, right? So you have to have that upon request. If a tenant requests that, you have to give it to them. If you do not give it to a tenant and they are rejected or denied, then you have to give them their application deposit back. You cannot keep it. I would just strongly suggest that you give it to them on the front end rather than wait for them to request it, just so you know they have a copy of it. Now, they don't have to sign it or anything like that. It's a good idea to make that a best practice for your files, but they don't have to sign it. I will let everybody know that, you know, we're all members of the Texas Realtors. Texas Realtors does have a tenant selection criteria model policy that you can go download on their website. So utilize that tool. It's in doc format, so you can go in there, slap your logo on it, boom. By the end of this show, you're going to be in full compliance there. But that's very, very important. And if you're a homeowner, you have to have one too. So just remember that. That's really important. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to talk tenants now, or?
Let's start tenants now.
You're so excited about that.
I did. I just got excited there for a second. So
yeah, no. So the reason I wanted to talk about representing tenants is, and I hope we have a lot of younger agents here, but you know, a lot of agents that are just getting started, you see a lot of them, they'll do anything, right? They just want to learn the business. They're eager beavers, and quite frankly, they got to make some money, right? Yeah. Representing tenants is really, really hard. And there's not a lot of education out there for how to properly represent a tenant. And so that's something I thought might be good for this session tonight, is how to do it and make sure you get paid, right? That's the most important thing. So questions to ask before working with a tenant. First of all, you guys are aware of the listing agreement that you sign on the sales side, right? You can sign, a buyer rep agreement, just like you do, when you're representing a buyer a tenant rep agreement, just like when you sign a buyer rep agreement. It might be scary to approach a tenant and feel like you're locking them in, but if it was me, I don't think I would do anything without that rep agreement signed. I think you're going to be wasting your time, because not only are they talking to you, they have their phone up and they're going, oh, no, see you later. I'm going to go do this one. And you've wasted 2 days or whatever working with that person. So I would strongly recommend that you do get that signed before you do anything. But I do have quite a few questions that you definitely should ask tenants or potential tenants that you might want to represent. So you have a good feel of, am I actually going to get paid on this, or am I just going to be wasting time? So the first thing that you should always ask again, these are common sense questions, but a lot of people don't think of them. Have you actually given notice to your landlord? Now that means a lot to me because I represent landlords, right? And a lot of people are looking before they've given notice, to their prior landlord. I don't think I would want to represent a tenant that hasn't given notice to their landlord yet, even though that they say, well, I'm just looking right now, right? I just think you're wasting your time. I'm not going to look very fondly of that on the other side of the transaction if I'm the property manager representing that owner, because then I'm like, well, why would I want this person? They're not even giving notice to their old landlord. They're probably not going to give notice to us either, right?
Well, and going to that, what I hear a lot is, Ashley, I've got to get a 60-day notice, but I'm so scared if I don't find anything. I mean, I guess I'll stay. I'm not really happy here, but I don't want to be homeless. Okay, well, you're gonna have to at least give notice. Like that's a non-negotiable, and then we'll work really hard to find you a better solution. But if you're not happy in your current environment, then we've got to get you to that next level. So we're putting the cart before the horse. But I think that's a lot what I at least hear on that side with the notices. People just get unnerved because a lot of times those listings are not put out there for future move-in dates. They're vacant properties that are ready to be occupied right away. But you still got to encourage them, and they still have to do it the right way.
Right. There's no right or wrong answer to that question. It's just, you got to make an educated decision. I just wanted you guys to have some perspective from the other side of why I may not want that person if they haven't given notice.
Yep.
I don't want you wasting your time if you're representing tenants. That's what's most important. Other questions asked, when do you need to move? What is your move-in date? That helps you kind of, figure out the roadmap that we need to navigate. What is the maximum rent you want to pay? Not how much rent you want to pay. What's the maximum, right? So that you have a good feel for that. Do you have pets? That's going to be a challenge in a lot of properties. I'm sure everybody on here is going to say, oh, yes to that. It depends on what kind of pets they have, how many pets they have. That can be an issue. Another thing, as it kind of folds into that, instead of using the word pets, let's use animals. You guys are probably aware of the issues with emotional support animals, service animals. A good way to word that is, do you have any special needs that may be related to a disability, right? So that kind of plays into that, and see if they have an emotional support or a service animal. And then educate yourself on how to represent a tenant with that animal, what's going to be expected of them. That's a totally different class. Go back and watch our John Bradford session we did back in November.
It was a good one. What is it?
That was.
I think instead of your yes. So that was
the one on pet screening and how to deal with emotional support animals. So if you guys haven't seen it, it's one of the most popular Real Talks ever. John Bradford, the owner of PetScreening.com, navigated that roadmap for us. Another one, how long do you expect to stay in the property? You see where I'm going with these questions? These are things to help you kind of get a feel for the tenant and how you can best represent them. Do they smoke? Tell them to be honest. You need them to be honest here. Do they smoke? What are your must-haves? Do you need covered parking? Do you need a first floor master bedroom? Get a feel for this stuff up front so you're not wasting your time looking for listings that are not going to work for them. Do they need a fenced yard? We see that one a lot. And this is my most important, well, not most, the second most important. It's almost like, what's it going to take for me to get you in this car today, right? It's the used car salesman line. What background issues are we going to have to overcome to get you into this lease, right?
There's always some.
Pretty cheesy, right? So you need to tell people, hey, look, don't lie. You got to tell me. You can remind them of the fiduciary responsibility, and you have the, the duty of confidentiality, but you have to know what you're dealing with. Don't just take their word for it that they're squeaky clean. Tell them, hey, look, 99% chance they're going to run a background check on you. It's going to come out. Okay. So what are we dealing with? I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you navigate this. Okay. So make sure you're pretty firm with that, and make sure you set the expectations and scare them straight that it's going to come out in the wash. Okay. They may just go away right then. They ghost you immediately. And then, I didn't waste my time. Right. So you ask the right question. And that's what's really important here, is asking the right questions. And we kind of teased this. So now I will give you the question, the most important question to ask. Do you know what it is, Ashley?
Oh.
Put her on the spot. Anybody in the chat? What's the most important question you should ask a tenant? I'll give them 30 seconds, but why don't you take a guess?
Most important question to ask a tenant
that you're going to represent. No guesses?
I have no idea. I'm stumped. That never happens.
Wait, I don't have a mic to drop.
I mean,
Ashley, she's never been stumped before.
It happens for a while.
All right, that's enough time. The most important. I'm just sorry. I'm just reading the chat here. Nobody's got it right.
Eviction? Cash or check?
Okay, Francana, you're not allowed to ask or answer questions. She's a property manager, but she's on the right track. To me, the most important question to ask a potential tenant you're going to represent: do you have any stinking money?
Yeah.
Do you have any money? Because you have to be prepared to have money if you're approved and you sign a lease. Because we're not going to take it off the market until you've signed a lease and you've paid the money that you have to pay up front, which is typically going to be, you know, your security deposit, maybe your pet deposits, whatever the requirements are for the agent on the other side or the owner. So it's a simple question, but it is the most important question to me.
You know,
and if they
okay, let me tell you why I was stumped. Let me just argue my point just for a second. I pride myself in setting proper expectations. And so whether it's in a purchase or going to a rental, let's talk about what our expected costs are going to be. So I'm just proactive and I get it out there, you know, as far as that goes. Right. So you're going to have to give me a pass on that one, you know, as far as not knowing what to deal with. But that's true because it's expensive to get into a rental and people don't realize, especially if they've been used to apartments versus a single family property, because deposits look very different in an apartment situation than a single family home. And so a $2,000 a month rental is going to cost you $2,000 for the rent, $2,000 for the deposit. If you've got a pet, whatever that cost is, maybe $500-$700, whatever the landlord's costing, and all of those monies need to be available basically, you know, up front. And so it is a lot, and we should be doing a better job when we're representing tenants to have those conversations to get them prepared.
Now, I will also make everyone aware that our industry is evolving rapidly and new solutions are coming online every day. There's some property management companies now that have gone to no deposit solutions, that you don't have to pay a deposit up front. So if they are cash poor on the front end, you know, you may look for companies that have, you know, solutions like that, where they don't have to have a deposit on the front end. And there's a whole process for that. That's a show for another day as well.
I'm already confused.
Yeah, so that, you know, that is something you might want to look for in MLS listings as well as, you know, what their deposit requirements are, or if they have alternate means of addressing deposit issues.
Yeah.
So that's something that is very important. But what you said is the most important thing. You know, obviously that's a pretty raw question. Hey, do you have any freaking money, right? Mm-hmm. But you're right in that you need to set those expectations. Like, here's what you need to be ready to pay. You're going to have to pay application fees no matter what. Boom, you got to pay that now. If you get approved, guess what? They're going to want this much money in 24 hours. And then guess what? When you move in to get keys, you have to have this much money. Are you prepared for all these steps? And can you have that money available? And not only do you have it available, do you have it like in cleared funds? I don't want a personal check. Most property management companies will not let you have possession with a personal check. Yeah. You're going to have cleared funds. So, you know, they can say, oh yeah, I can scratch a check. Well, that's, you know, that's not going to work for us. We're not going to let you have the property. Sure. So excellent points.
Okay. Yep. So here's what I am going to say is we get so excited and we now only have 30 minutes for our last two segments that are super juicy. So I am playing the time clock person because I'm excited about these next two segments. So are you ready?
Hey, you're the bus driver. I'm just sitting on the back row enjoying the scenery.
I like it, but I don't want to get reprimanded. So I'm just, you know, I want to cover this because I think this information is so stinking great. So can I do one thing is I'm going to throw you a curveball. We're going out of order. Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. So to number 3, because I think these are absolutely amazing, and I want to make sure we give this all that we can. But
Right.
facts and myths with leasing, property management, investment properties during COVID-19, because I'm hearing that a lot more from my investors who want to continuously purchase properties. So not even if they're a current landlord, is this even a really smart time to purchase? I mean, am I being a proper steward of my finances? Should I keep it in my investment account? Should I do something else? And so when you brought this up, I went, man, this is money. This is money, because I think this absolutely explains that yes, it's still a great time to purchase. So,
Right.
so can we dive in? You ready?
I was born ready.
All right, let's do it.
I
Okay,
like that you're going out of order. I think it's your new like tightly wound bow
it
or
is.
what, but
This is
it's the
my
new and
battle.
improved Ashley.
Well, it's my battle attire, because we're having to joust in the streets for whether it's buying a property or renting a property right now. So I've got to be ready. No dangling earrings. Got to have the hair up.
Right.
My hair.
Game
So
face. Let's do it.
yeah, but okay, let's go into evictions, because
Yep.
that's the biggest thing.
Well, let's go in. You're wanting to go out of order. Let's go out of order. Let's talk what you just said. Is this a good time to buy investment real estate? Right. That was probably one of the last things we're going to cover, but let's get this out up front, because this kind of ties into what you covered in the last show, is how insanely hot the sales market is. We've shown you charts and data. The leasing market is insane, but now you got clients that want to get investment real estate, but yet it's an insane market. So how do you do that, right? Is it a good time? Well, the answer to that is it depends. Obviously the numbers need to make sense. Let's just keep it, since we've been talking single family, let's keep it in the single family realm as far as the discussion goes. Can you find anything, in the price point that your owner's looking? Most investors, they first of all, they used to come to us for $100,000 properties. Then it went to 200. Now people are closer to 300, so, it's just growing with the Dallas-Fort Worth market too. The way I look at it is the numbers right now in a super hot market are going to, as far as from a return and the financial analysis you do for your clients, the numbers are going to stink. They're flat out going to stink unless you find a screaming opportunity. And those are really, really, really hard to come by right now. Do you wonder why you get so many of those text messages and voicemails and letters in the mail wanting to buy your off-market property? It's kind of like spam, right? You get spam because people respond to it. People are responding, these guys that are turning over every rock looking for real estate.
You know what my response is to them? Sir, I do not have a buyer's representation agreement with you. And if I share any of my off-market properties, then I would be going against the clear cooperation rule. And I am a rule follower. So that's how I respond. And you always get a, huh? On the other side, instead of just hanging up or anything else, that's what I usually do for them and stuff. So, hey, I would hate to have that job, but yes, it's incessant right now. So.
It is. So that my point is, that's how hard it is to find good opportunities. It's really hard to find good cash flowing opportunities. If you find one, fantastic. But, the way that I've kind of modified my personal investment strategy is I used to be that guy only looking for the perfect deal. It had to meet my numbers or I'm not even going to sniff it. Now I look at it more from, okay, the numbers are going to stink for years 1 through 3 or whatever. If you've got a long runway, you're wanting to buy and hold, you're a 5, 10, 15, 20-year hold. It's almost like buying a stock the same way, right? Why are you trying to time that stock if you're going to hold it for 20 years? So think of it like that from a real estate perspective too. You tell your clients, look, it's not going to cash flow probably the way you want it right off the top. You need to realize that, but also take into account somebody else is subsidizing your investment. They're paying you rent, right? So if it's cash flow neutral, even maybe cash flow negative, you might be able to use that to your advantage. That could be advantageous to you on your taxes. So right. It doesn't hurt to have a property showing a loss on your taxes for a lot of people. So if it's not a cash flow positive situation, think of it like that, because when you get a few years down the road, that subsidized investment has been paying your mortgage off. The property's increased in value. The rents have gone up. It's going to be cash flowing. And by the time you're nearing retirement, it's going to be an amazing asset for you.
Danny, do you know what people, I've had so many people say, oh gosh, I just wish I'd bought a slew of rental properties even a year ago. We heard that 5 years ago. We heard that 10 years ago, when the market crashed and everything else. And the common denominator is, which is why I love that you put this quote down here, because it's one of my favorites. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait, by Real Rogers. That's the whole point, is if you're looking for instant gratification, this isn't necessarily going to be it. But the long-term play is investing in real estate is always safe, because the best investment on earth is earth. Lewis Glickman. That's another quote that I love. So those are the things that I think we have to keep on telling people, is get rid of those arbitrary, thresholds. Like you said, you're an investor as well, and you're in the marketplace. You had to abandon some of that school of thought and say, I'm still making sound choices, because the Dallas-Fort Worth marketplace and what we're doing here, it's a great place to continue to invest.
Absolutely. You nailed it on the head. And I love that you love my quotes, because those are two of the quotes that I live by. There's nothing better than that. And everybody on this call, or if you've never used that, use it with your clients. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait.
Always.
It can't be said any better than that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Yeah. So,
but that also plays in. You mentioned the best investment on earth is earth. I love that one. But the first one plays into the third one. More money has been made in real estate than in all industrial investments combined. Is that insane? Andrew Carnegie, that was attributed to him. So just think about it. That's how you can kind of paint the picture when you're talking to clients as you start to represent, investors.
Well, and let me put one more thing on there. That was all prior to COVID-19. And then what has dramatically changed is people are reevaluating what their home life situation looks like, whether they're an owner or a renter, because our world has changed for the interim. A lot of things have changed for the long run. And so people are being more particular about the lifestyle amenities that are under those roof lines. And so you sit there and you go, that was the one thing that remained steady, is that our homes were still the most important thing and asset in our lives. And so that's what I keep on telling people. Yeah, it might be risky to invest into an office building right now, but is it really risky to invest in a single family home? And so, no, I think that's great. Is there anything else you want to touch on, or do you want to move on to the next part? Because
let's move on. Go for it.
Okay. So, kind of combining, the evictions and the moratoriums and even the rent assistance, those three things going together are the things that landlords are kind of thinking about. Should I do it? Is there enough out there to protect me, to protect my tenant? And what does that look like? Should I still need to go through the eviction process?
All right. So let me preface this by saying to everybody listening, we're not going to answer questions as it pertains to evictions. There's so many scenario-based things. Yeah. Let's just kind of give everybody a perspective of where the market is right now, or what the state of affairs right now, because there is a lot of misinformation out there, and people just flat out are confused. Yeah. People in Texas, politics aside, are completely confused, because we're dealing on my run sheet here. The first fact versus myth was, I wrote, can you evict? Yes, you can evict. You can even evict for non-payment of rent right now. Yeah. A lot of people really don't think you can, which is shocking. So yes, you can evict, and you can evict for non-payment of rent. The moratoriums we referenced, we had the CARES Act. We're not going to talk about that. Now we've got the CDC eviction moratorium, which essentially says if they sign this piece of paper and swear they were impacted, you can't evict them. That's been extended until June the 30th. Okay. What's relevant to us and what's confusing people now is March 31st, the Texas Supreme Court's emergency order number 34. If you go Google it, you'll see what I'm talking about. That expired. It was not renewed. So basically, in a nutshell, what that means is the judges have been instructed that it's no longer their job to enforce the CDC moratorium. Okay. So that's huge. So basically what it's done is stripped the citations The citation is the document the constable goes and hands to a tenant. It was required to say, hey, look, you have all these rights under the CDC moratorium, and here's the document you need to sign to give to your landlord, and they can't evict you. Well, guess what? All that's gone, right?
Okay.
It's no longer required. So it basically falls at the landlords themselves to abide by the CDC federal moratorium. Basically, the state of Texas has said, you know what? We're following Texas law. That's it. Because so this is probably confusing everybody even more, but the long and short of it is, yes, you can evict. You can evict for non-payment of rent. You can get your judgment, but you're still potentially opening yourself up to prosecution at a federal level because there are hefty fines and even potential jail time if you violate the CDC guidelines or the CDC moratorium. Is that happening in the market? It's not. That doesn't mean it won't, though. So this just came down the pike a week ago, so we have no idea how the courts are ruling on that. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. A good website for people to learn more about this and kind of keep up with it, or even share with your clients, is the Texas Justice Court Training Center website. It's tjctc.org. TJ, C as in cat, T as in Tom, C as in cat.org. That is always updated with the most recent information. So kind of playing off this eviction stuff, our goal has been trying not to evict. So how can we get through that part? There are solutions out there to help with rental assistance. You've probably heard some of these terms, in the market. We've got the Texas Rent Relief Program, which has been a complete and utter disaster. Article in the Morning News this week said it went live 45 days ago. 176,000 tenants have applied. Payments have only been made to 250 of them. Yeah. There's $1.3 billion in this bucket of money. They've paid out 1.5 million of it. So they don't know what they're doing. The software is a disaster. The bottom line is that will get corrected at some point. There's also the TRAP, the Texas Emergency Rental Assistance Program. That's another thing that only certain cities and counties have. That seems to work quicker. We actually had a tenant approved today for like $9,000 in back rent through this TRAP program through Tarrant County. That's the first one we've had success with. Anybody in the chat, if you've had any success through one of these programs, please share with everyone else. But if you want to look into this, texasrentrelief.com is the website for the main one. And then if you just Google TRAP, TERAP, that will take you to that other one that's offered by some of the cities and counties around the area. So I'm calling that our landlord safety net. If you don't want to try to navigate this eviction in these crazy times, you can go after this other bucket of money. So that's what we're doing for our clients that are having problems right now.
Now, Danny, let me throw something out there from, again, from a sales agent's perspective, from somebody that works with investors as well. Are you seeing a considerable amount of issues with rental collection right now?
Great question. So as an industry, I'm talking from the single family management perspective. Our trade group has been NARPM, National Association of Residential Property Managers, really long, NARPM, NARPM. We've been collecting that data across the nation for single family managers just to track collection rates. As an industry on the single family realm, even since April of last year, the numbers across the country have been over 90% for the overwhelming majority. Our personal company portfolio has been between 94 and 96% collection. Now these numbers are taken whenever your grace period ends. So we run our report on the 4th day of the month. So that means as of the 4th, we're at 94 to 96% fully collected. So that is great news. We happen to be in an unbelievable market with fantastic, companies. We have all these different industries here, and there's jobs everywhere. So that's been really good. It really hasn't hit us that hard. We've had very few issues so far. Now, your mileage may vary. If you play in a different price point than we do, our average rents hover around $1,800 a month. Yeah. If you're a $900 a month company, you probably have a lot more lower numbers than we do. So, but I think all of our peers on this call would probably echo my sentiments there.
No, I think that's, I think that's great. And even there, what I have heard from some property managers that are more in that kind of workforce housing realm and some of that, have said, you know what, they've still seen, because again, the home is the most important thing to people right now. And so they're working really hard to make sure that that's the last thing impacted. And so, that's just a sentiment that I've heard. And I've also heard landlords just being proactive. If there's going to be an issue, open the dialogue, see what you can do. It might be something that's just a momentary lapse, that if you just get ahead, if it's still a great tenant, and work out, a solution to figure out how you can transition through one bad month. And so, oh, I lost my co-host. So he'll jump back on. We've got 15 more minutes, but one of the other topics that Danny was really passionate about was the pros and cons of transitioning your owner occupied home, which is a property that you've been inhabiting as your own home, into a tenant occupied property. You decide that you want to go to another one and level up or do what you want to do. But hey, you still want to be a savvy steward of your money. There he is.
I don't know what happened there.
You know what? It's okay. I was keeping it up. I mean,
All right.
Here's the deal. You now have to understand. Okay, he switched it. I was like, you are now Ashley and I am now Danny. So, but we're good. So I was going into our technical second topic, which was basically transitioning your owner occupied property into a rental property, because you want to be a great steward of your money and be an investor and invest in that great space of earth that we were talking about. So we've got 14 minutes left. Let's
do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so all you sales agents that rolled your eyes at us talking about leases, I think this is the most important thing we're going to talk about from your perspective, because this is going to give you some good ammo and make you fully educated on things to think about, right? When you're talking to an owner that's considering moving out and moving a tenant in, or it's a sales listing and they say, you know what, I don't want to sell it, I want to lease it. You need to tell them to slow down and think about some of these things. There's a lot of things that I'm going to go over you might already have heard of. There's going to be some things you probably haven't. I have this conversation at least once a day with a prospective client. And they're like, wow, I didn't even think about that. So the first thing I want to go over is risk. You can't avoid the word risk. Risk is the most important thing. It's the elephant in the room. There's risk involved with being a landlord, okay? In a vacuum, you lease your house out to this perfect tenant that keeps it in museum quality condition. They make $1 million a year and they pay you 2 days early, right? It's perfect. That's not the real world, okay? That's in a vacuum. We have this thing called life. In the last 12 months, we have a pandemic. People can't pay rent. People get divorced. There's problems involved in this. So you have to understand there's risk. Now, there's ways to minimize your risk. We can go over that in another topic or call, but it's no different investing in Wall Street. You're investing in Main Street. So there's all those disclaimers on all your stocks and mutual funds, right? Past performance isn't indicative of future results, okay? So understand that there's going to be risk. Can you afford it? We talked about, do you have any money? Well, that's the same question to ask an owner, right? Do you have money, okay? You can't just sit back and collect rent. Things are going to break. You're going to have to pay for them. When you live there, you can put it off. A lot of times with a tenant, you can't, right? Tenants have rights too, believe it or not. Tenants are people, treat them like you would yourself. Can you afford 2 mortgages? If you're moving out, you still have a mortgage and you're getting another one. Can you afford that? What if rent's not coming in? We're in a pandemic. People can't pay. Can you float that second mortgage? You need to make sure you truly can and not rely on that rent money to pay for it, okay? Never assume that you're going to be using the rent money. Okay. A lot of people say, well, I need the rent money to make my mortgage. We get that all the time in the property management business. I'm like, I'm sorry. They didn't pay rent. That's your problem, not mine. Right. Yeah. Well, I meant from a financial perspective. Okay. Yeah. They don't need to be relying on rent to pay this mortgage. So they need to have a come to Jesus meeting with themselves to make sure they can do this. We talked about 2 mortgages, extended vacancy, repairs, higher taxes, higher insurance, potential evictions. These are things that could happen. On that same note of, do you have any money? One of my other favorite slogans, Ashley, is you got to pay to play, right? So do you have money? You got to have it to be a landlord. There's no way to get around that. Tax consequences. This is something that I'm really shocked and I'm giving away part of my sales technique to clients. So all you other property managers on the call, you're welcome, because I'm shocked at how many of you guys do not prepare your clients for this. What are the tax ramifications when I sell that property? As an owner occupant, every agent probably knows what the tax law says, right? You can take your gain up to $250,000 tax-free. As a married couple, $500,000. We all know that. It was on our test. Come on, everybody. Lie to me. Tell me you know it. When you transition out of that and you put a tenant in there, the rules change. So whenever you sell it, the IRS looks back 5 years, and you as an owner must have occupied it 2 of those previous 5 years in order for your gain to be tax-free, okay? So that's really important because people don't think that far out, right? So just remind them, if you don't learn anything from me today, 2 out of the previous 5 years, the owner must have occupied it to take the profit tax-free. You're going to lose your homestead exemption. If you don't know what that is, that's not for this call. The homestead exemption will fall off, over 65 exemptions, whatever exemptions you have. Once you move out of it, they stay for that calendar year, but January 1st of the next year, they're going to fall off. Sure. How does that impact you? What if you're escrowing? Your escrow doesn't know that, okay? So you might have a shortage there, right? And so everybody's got one of those escrow analyses, right? Oh, you were short, so now your payment is this, right? Goes back to, do you have money, okay? So that's really important that they understand how loss of exemptions are going to impact their taxes. Who's going to manage it? This is a good one. Are you going to manage it? Or are you going to get somebody else to manage it? Self-management's cheaper. I hear that all the time, but is it? These are things you need to ask yourself.
Okay. Yep. So I'm going to stop you right there because I hear that all the time. Those are I've only got 1 property or 2 properties. So I'm going to self-manage and I'm going to save that percentage of because you're not going to work for free, Danny. Let's be honest. I don't know why landlords and property owners think that they're going to be able to find a property manager that's willing to work for pennies. But I'm whether this is fact or myth, but when a repair happens, or repair is necessary, something happens to the property, do you have phenomenal relationships with different vendors because you have a portfolio of properties that you manage that maybe you have some, great relationships and managed expectations on the cost of repairs? Is that something that you can offer as being a property manager?
So that's one variable of some of the bullet points we're talking about is, when you align yourself with a property manager, you don't want to go, first of all, with the cheapest option. Maybe you do. That's totally your decision, obviously. But I like to say a good property manager pays for themselves.
Yeah.
They should, because what you're paying for is their experience, their education, and their knowledge. It's no different than any other trade, right? You're not going to go to the cheapest brain surgeon, are you? Like, you have a brain tumor. You're going to go to this guy because he's 2% cheaper? No, you're going to go to the one you think is the best, most qualified person. Sure. If you align yourself with a poor property manager, it's really no different than aligning yourself with yourself, because they're not much more educated than you are. Sure. Secondly, they don't have, the qualified vendors that are tried and true that can do work for you. It's really hard finding good vendors. We work really hard at that. They have to offer good work. They have to be insured. They have to be reliable. They have to have good communication skills. And, pricing, it's all important, right? So we don't find the cheapest vendors, because the cheapest vendors many times are the most expensive vendors. But yes, you will save money with the vendors the property manager that you've aligned yourself with has available to them. Sure. Because of that volume of work that they have. And we're going to be top of the line in August when it's 110 and your AC goes out. Guess whose vendor is going to be there before lunchtime?
Well, they're going to prioritize you because you've got however many properties you have versus Joe Schmo calling them. Right. And I'm sure that's also something that was taken into consideration during this horrible freeze we just had.
Oh my gosh. Amen to that. Good luck finding a plumber after that, and yeah. We had 7 plumbing outfits working for us 24 hours a day for almost a week. And so we had every one of our properties put back together in a matter of days. And we heard all these other properties that were just sitting there. Tenants had to move out. They had no plumbing. So, yep, that is absolutely right.
And that's super important because we only have a few minutes left. And so I want to create some, some nuggets and impact here towards the end, because That's exactly what I'm talking about, Danny. That was an unprecedented freeze. We weren't, I mean, that is not something that is typical, but stuff happens. We have, extreme winds, we have tornadoes, we have hail damage, we have freezes, we have all these natural disasters that end up happening to the properties. And if you don't have, as an individual property, owner, and that's self-managing, those type of relationships, you're stuck. And there were people that just the landlord finally said, I can't get it fixed. You can move out. I mean, that's what was happening. And so, I mean, how much money was lost by trying to mitigate some cost on the property management fee? And they ended up, and that's always my thing. Penny wise and dollar dumb. And I'm not saying to not be a good financial steward of your expenses, but you've got to think long term. And there was a lot of stress that was involved in trying to manage fixing all of these things that had happened. I had one of my clients, and he was amazing and diligent in trying to get it fixed. But how many tankless water heaters did you hear about that were leaking during this because they were on an exterior wall or whatever else? Hey, tankless water heaters are the best invention, right? I mean, not in this situation. They weren't meant to be in those elements. And so trying to get those replaced or leaks fixed, it was hard. And so, so those were just the things that I think people had to come and face almost immediately with, yes, do you know how to collect rent? Great. Do you know how to sit there and send somebody over to fix a leaky faucet? Maybe. But when there is a major natural disaster or another occurrence that happens just to singularly your home, are you equipped to manage that? Because like you said, tenants are people too. You need to treat them like you would treat yourself. Somebody is living in that property and they deserve to be taken seriously and given precedence in those matters. That doesn't mean taken advantage of, but but you still have to give them precedence in that. So, and you helped me in one of those situations with an owner that wanted to self-manage, and we had a very nominal mite error, but I know we didn't get to that really, but the emotional cost of it for them, they learned really fast that the emotional cost of self-managing was not worth it. And now you're helping them because I was able to steer the ship and say, don't take that on.
Right. And you just nailed it. I mean, you put a nice little bow on this conversation with the emotional cost. That's the thing you can't put a price on.
Correct.
Very few people are built the way us crazy psychotic property managers are. I mean, we're paid to be the bad cop. And most people are good-hearted people. They don't want to have those difficult conversations. If you're not cut out for it, it's not worth being a landlord. It's just not, because you're going to be miserable, absolutely miserable. And I think that is the most important thing, Ashley, is the emotional toll it can take on you.
Well, because Danny, you take it very seriously, the properties that you manage, but they're properties that you manage. They're not your home, your previous home. And so I do see that from the standpoint of a lot of clients that I have that, that's going to be their first investment property. They're going to go into that. And that's the hard part. You can prepare them for the cost and mitigate risk and all of those other things, but you can't prepare them for somebody coming in and maybe not treating your property the way you want it to be treated, because they're a tenant and not a homeowner. And that doesn't mean that they're treating it poorly, but it's still not the same. And so as Sherry Fearbacher just chimed in, let the professionals do what they do. There's a reason for it. I'm not a good mechanic. I don't need to cut my own hair. I will do my own nails because that's a little different. I mean, nobody's going to see that. But you use the great reference. I don't want to go to the cheapest brain surgeon. I want to go to the one that's going to get me the results that I deserve. And I think that's what people need to understand. Align yourself with property managers like you, Danny, and so many of the others that we do business with, because you deserve a wonderful experience, because this should be a long-term situation. Buy and hold real estate for a long term. You want to deal with this for the next 20 years of your life.
You nailed it. 1,000% true. Can I put a nice little bow on this for us?
Yes,
real
you
quick?
can.
Okay, all right.
I
have 30 seconds, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you guys want more education on this, if you want to be a property manager, you don't. I just want to make sure everybody's aware there is a whole series of classes that I teach And we only do them once a year at MetroTex. It's the Texas Residential Property Management Certification courses. You can take these classes a la carte. There's 6 of them. They're all 3 hours each. They're all CE. You can take them in any order. There's no prerequisites. So if you just want to better your education, or if you have a member of your team that you want them to get educated on some of the things we deal with, look at those classes. You can see them at mymetrotex.com. They're April 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. We're going to be doing them on Zoom. Mymetrotex.com. The certifications themselves, you can read about at texasrealestate.com. Or you can reach out to me at any time, Danny at bluecrownproperties.com, and I will, go over any classes with you.
Well,
boom, done.
No, that's phenomenal. And again, if you guys heard him correctly, once a year they offer these. And so they're coming up here in a week and a half or 2 weeks. And so I would really urge you. Now, from my standpoint, I'm an owner of my company. We will not allow any of our agents to actually act as a property manager or play in that field without taking such courses. So this is an amazing opportunity. If you're a broker or manager and you've got, like you said, an agent that wants to get into it, have them take these classes. You're a phenomenal teacher. Your classes are always packed. I just appreciate you coming alongside me and doing this again. We got the cool blue flame.
I love the flame.
Yes, I love the flame. You even, you know what? You even dropped off for a second, we had some curveballs that were thrown at us, but we made it work. And I'm just super excited that you joined me again, and I'm excited to do more in this upcoming year together.
Well, you know what, Ashley? This whole industry is about curveballs. So, right?
Yes.
If you can't hit the curveball, you can't do real estate.
Yes. No, I agree. So with that note, we are going to say goodbye to all of our wonderful guests that have joined us. And I saw a lot of tags and a lot of different things that were going on here. So I think this was an amazing informational session. I know we didn't get through everything we wanted to discuss, but you too can learn more by taking the classes in April. So go to mymetrotex.org and you can see
.com.
.com. Oh no, I'm looking at org over here with the Texas Justice Court Training Center. So thank you for coming alongside me, and I appreciate it, Danny. So looking forward to doing this again soon.
Just don't take 5 months to ask me back.
I won't. It's good. All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.